Hey everybody, today we go over my worst injuries from Strongman. If you enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like. Comment below which injuries you think is the worst, and let's get into it. So first I want to talk about the first injury, and probably the one that took me the longest to heal from, which was an ingrown hernia. So it was down, you know, right down the lower part of my abdomen on the right hand side. When the doctors found it, they thought it was a small hole that was probably only about this big. And when they went in for the surgery, it turned out, because my abdomen wall was so thick, it ended up being like that big. And so I got a nice little scar down there. And it was, still can't really figure out how it happened. I just noticed things were kind of popping in and out. And so I went and got checked, and sure enough, I had a ingrown hernia and had to get it fixed. While getting it fixed, it didn't really hurt. It just was aggravating. After I got it fixed, it hurt like hell. I couldn't sit up, I couldn't move. 2 weeks after the surgery, I sneezed and had to take a knee because it hurt so bad. It was quite possibly one of the hardest things to recover from, because the scar tissue and your nerves are the same color. So if they have to fix it again, and they put the mesh in, by the way, but if they have to fix it again, there's like a 40% chance they'll slice the nerve that runs down in there. Well, that's the nerve that controls half of the feeling in your unit. So it's pretty important that you don't re-injure it, because I'd kind of like to keep everything correct there. Trying to be politically correct, or not too descriptive, but it was just brutal. I couldn't lift weights for 4 months. When I finally got cleared to go lift weights again, I go into the gym and I decide to start with squats, because it was my favorite lift, still is. And I'm squatting and I work up to like 500 pounds and I do a set of 10. And it just so happened, this is the first and only time this happened, my doctor happened to be at the gym, the guy that did the surgery on me. And he's like, "I thought I told you to lift light." I'm like, "That is, I did a set of 10. He just shakes his head and walks away. But he had told me if I feel anything there, like if I feel any stress or pulling on it or pain in that area, to just pack up and go home. So I did a couple more exercises and I went over to the leg press. I got to maybe 6 plates to start with. I did like 2 reps and put it in and locked it up and went back, because that was it. It put a lot of pressure on it, and it made it feel like it was going to blow out, so I called it a day. And it literally took about 1 year and 3 months before I couldn't feel it doing anything again. So my deadlifts, squats, leg press, laying down for the bench press, because you got to put your legs back, it was tight that way too. So I had to really be careful with it for a while. So that's probably one of the hardest ones for me to come back from. Another one is my wrist. I got a nice little Harry Potter lightning bolt scar on my wrist, where cleaning a log somehow lengthened and shortened that artery that's in my wrist, and I've ended up kinking it like a hose and folding it in half, and my fingers were turning blue. So if I had left it that way, I'd lose these 3 fingers. So went to the hospital. They couldn't figure out what it was. They sent me back. My fingers are still turning blue. I went to go see one of my friends who's a doctor. He sets me up with a hand specialist like the next day. I walk in there and he's like, "Yeah," he thought I had a blood clot in there. He's like, "Yeah, you need to get to the hospital stat." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "That means right now." So he sent me to the hospital. I get there, they put me through a CT scan, and the guy running the CT scan was supposed to check me into the hospital as well, but he couldn't read the CT scan. The bone density in my wrist was such that they couldn't get a clear view through it. So he just sends me home. So about 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day, I get a call from Dr. Hijazi. He's like, "Where are you?" "I'm at the hospital." I'm like, "I'm at work." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." The guy couldn't see through it, so he sent me home. My wrist, and he sent me home, and he just starts laughing. He goes, "You need to get back here." They check me in, they put me on a heparin drip, they give me a bunch of blood thinners, they just shoot me full of them. and checked me into the room. The next morning, they set me up for an angiogram, and I completely forgot what an angiogram is and didn't think that big of a deal about it until they started shaving me, till the nurse started shaving me down there, and I was like, uh-oh. And I realized they're going to go in through there, so they went in through my leg, up through my heart, and down through my arm. And it's really painful because, you know, your muscles are fed through your arteries with blood. Well, when they put more fluid in there and pump it in there, it's actually kind of painful. My hand kept closing. I couldn't even control it. So a nurse had to like lay on my hand to hold it open to be able to see my wrist and what was going on in it. And he was like, oh, never seen that before. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, your arteries are clear as a bell, and that's not a clot. You folded the artery in half. I'm like, I did what? He goes, yeah, you usually see things like that at birth, but not now. He goes, I've never seen that before. So the next day I had surgery. I got my little Harry Potter scar, and about 4 months after that, I went to the 2011 World's Strongest Man. So that was also pretty entertaining to hear, to injury and one to heal from. Another one of the injuries I've had, and I've had the scar or the gap in there now for about 6-7 years, is I tore my pec bench pressing. I hadn't bench pressed heavy for a long time because I was told it doesn't help you in Strongman, and especially since my log was so bad, I wanted to concentrate on the overhead. I went to a powerlifting meet and decided, hey, I kind of want to get back into this, and 3 weeks in a row I throw 500 or 525 like it wasn't heavy at all, and I start bringing it down, and it just felt like when you grab a piece of chicken and you tear it, I just felt it give, and I didn't push on the bar anymore. I just leaned to the left, leaned to the right, got some of the weight off, and then had to shove to get the thing off. And I remember Easton grabbing a hold of it because it was going to come back down on me and pushing it to the side and hit the floor, and I had this nice little divot in here, and it bruised up, and it probably took, I don't know, 4 months to get to where I could bench press again, even remotely anything kind of like a weight, like maybe 225. And I just slowly worked back up over time, but anytime it was sore, I just stopped. And it didn't separate from the muscle, so it didn't pull the tendon off. I actually tore the middle of the muscle belly about halfway down. So there's still half of it there and attached, but it's about halfway down, so it bundles up down here, and there's not a lot I can do about it. But benching wise, I can still bench. I'm a lot more careful with it, and I don't go to the extremes that I used to went to with it. But it's challenging, and you know, injuries happen. The last one we're going to talk about is compression fractures on my spine. I didn't even know I had them, but I was getting ready to do the hip lift in Australia for a Giants live show there, and I was training out in the street, and I put the belt too high up on my hips, and I lifted 2,000 pounds off the ground and immediately just dropped because the force of the belt was too high, and it put all the pressure on my lower back, and it made it to where I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I could barely get up the stairs. It was agonizing. I got a buddy that I went to high school with that's a chiropractor, and he's unbelievably good. His name's Steve Shaw. And I gave him a call, and I'm like, hey, can you take a look at me? He's like, yeah, I got an x-ray machine here. We'll take a look at it. We'll see what's going on. So he gets me adjusted, gets everything put back into place. We run the x-rays, and he looks at them, and there's a crack in L5 and 2 cracks in L4. But the thing that alarmed him the most was up through the rest of my spine, I had 8 compression fractures. And it basically looks like somebody puts their thumbprint into your lumbar, into the bones, like, because the compression from it was so great. And he's like, you got 8 of these. I've counted 8 of them. How are you walking? How are you not in pain? I go, I don't know. It's just, I'm fine. I guess the muscle is taking the pressure off the spine. And he's like, he's never seen anything like that before. He's like, you also have no room between your L5 and your sacrum. They're naturally fused. They don't move, which, okay, it doesn't hurt. there's just enough room for the nerves to come out. He goes, so you looked out there? I go, look, I'm not in pain. I just need to get this fixed so I can go compete. And he's just like, yeah, okay, you should retire. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. He goes, I know. So he fixed me up. I went down there. Jenkins and I both tied in the world record in the hip lift down there, and that's how I kind of made it through that injury. That's going to wrap it up for my worst injuries in Strongman. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. As always, train hard, train smart, and be the best you can be.